Vi pratade om den digitala agendan i Sverige igår, den svenska digitala agendan. Vi var också inne på EUs digitala agenda som ju ligger till grund till den vi har i Sverige. Nu så ska vi rikta blickarna över andra sidan Atlanten, nämligen till Kanada, och göra en utblick till eGovernment the Canadian way. Och den som ska berätta mer om det här, det är ingen mindre än Darren Brothers. Välkommen upp på scenen.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here today. I'm very excited to be in Sweden. This is actually my first time in Europe, and so kind of getting out of my country here. And I'm very interested to see that and what I could understand from the previous days' sessions, the common things that we're having to deal with and that kind of thing. To give a little background, I've been with the Manitoba government for about 22 years, and in various roles. And my current role is basically service delivery. I find solutions, and my teams implement them and support them in the long run. This includes our e-government initiatives as well. And so, I'm going to focus a little bit today on the tools and some of the structures that we use that I think have really helped us over the years develop our e-government strategies and have some successes. So first I'm going to give a little bit of a quick overview of Canada, Manitoba, give you a little bit of context of where we are. I have a little short video that I promised Manitoba trade guys that I would show. And then I'll go into some of our objectives, our early objectives around e-government, and some of the strategies that then evolved, and then we'll get really to the heart of it, which is some of the challenges we face, some of the successes that we've had, and that kind of thing. I'll also talk a little bit about what's been elusive for us, and maybe some of the things that I think really have stood out from us in terms of being able to deliver services. So, Canada, quick overview. So we're a very, very large country. We have a massive land mass. So big, I have no idea how big it is. But we have a relatively small population, 34 million people in Canada, and that's really reflected in Manitoba as well. We're the center province, I don't know if you can see it very well there, and we have about 1.2 million people. And then again, all pretty much concentrated in the south of the province, and our north is pretty much a lot of forests and lakes. And so part of the structure in Canada is there's 3 levels of government, and so this is significant to how we deliver services to citizens. We have our Canadian federal government that provides services in different areas to all Canadians. We have Manitoba, our provincial government, that's who I work for, so we're responsible for certain things, and then municipal governments. So our federal government tends to work around things like defense and banking and international relations, that kind of thing. Also, though, they take part in some forms of delivery of healthcare. And it's more from a conceptual model of how healthcare should work in Canada. And of course, they transfer payments down to our provinces, who are actually the delivery agencies for healthcare in Canada. And so in the provincial government, we deal with things like health, education is a provincial responsibility, social assistance, training, that kind of thing. And then municipalities, they deal with sort of on-the-ground water and waste, that kind of thing. Transportation. Transportation, again, is a bit of an odd one where we all have a little bit of a role in transportation. The Trans-Canada highways, the things like that cross the country, the responsibility of the federal government, or funded generally by the federal government. Manitoba maintains their provincial highways, and then the local municipalities maintain their local roads and that kind of stuff. So there's an overlap of services that we provide. So thinking of that from an e-government standpoint, some of that, it creates confusion for your average citizen of who do I call if I want something? Do I call my local guy? Do I call a provincial rep? Is it a federal responsibility? So lastly, I just wanted to mention, one of the challenges we will face, and I'll talk a little bit more, is we're geographically challenged. It's a hard place to get around in some ways. We're very large. Manitoba is kind of an interesting province that way. I'll flash up a little map here. If you look at that map, most of the east side and north is really inaccessible. And the cities like, or the towns really like Churchill and Gillam and stuff, are supported only by, flying in or trains or something. There's not much in the way of roads or accessibility there, which makes it challenging for us to run lines and stuff in that area. So, I do have to say one thing. As a Canadian male, in every presentation, I have to mention hockey. And I was trying to think of what is my connection with Sweden. I've never been here before. And so there is a connection into Sweden and Manitoba, and it relates to hockey. Many years ago, actually, in the late 70s, we had a championship, in fact, winning hockey team in what was then the World Hockey Association. It was sort of an opposing professional league to the NHL, which is our main league. And we had the championship team, and one of the reasons for that was we had a Swedish connection. We had three hockey players, Ulf Nielsen, Anders Hedberg, who are two of our forwards, and Lars Erik Sjöberg, who was our defenseman. And Sjöberg actually ended up being our captain when we first entered the NHL. But really it was the combination of Nielsen, Hedberg, and they played on a line with Bobby Hull, one of our Canadian stars. And we had a championship team, and it was fantastic. And it was actually... Now, the sad part of the story is I actually moved to Winnipeg and to Manitoba the year after they won the championship, and I have never seen one since. And if you ask any a Canadian or any Manitoba male about my age and say, why have we not won a Stanley Cup since then, because we're now amalgamated with the NHL, when we moved into the NHL, they rated our team in a sense for players, and they took our two forwards, our two Swedes, and ever since then, that's the reason that we don't have a Stanley Cup yet in Manitoba, is because we lost our Swedish connection. So I'm hoping our success in eGovernment is less challenging than us trying to win a Stanley Cup with our team right now. So also I need to provide, I promised our trade guys that I would provide a little overview of Manitoba, just a little 2-minute video, and we'll just flash through it now. Okay. That was our blatant advertising for Manitoba. It is a wonderful place. So thinking of that, let's get started with some talk about our e-government strategies and how do we think of e-government? And so I wasn't sure how to explain it. Like for me, e-government, probably my first time that I was exposed to e-government was really, we have a fellow in our organization who's I would call him our e-government strategist, Guy Gordon, and he's a fine fellow who's really been sort of pushing what originally was citizen service delivery for many years. I would say like 15 years or something like that. Was probably the first time that I encountered him, and it was because I in my department at the time, we ran a very large website and that kind of thing. And so we thought of it as, what does it mean? And so really what I did was I asked my mom, I was going out for a drive with her, and I said, what does e-government mean to you? So she's a senior citizen in Manitoba, and she said, well, dear, it's, I get an email from my, member of the legislation, our political, the political person in her area, and she gets an email from them, and so she's kind of interested in that, and but mostly for her, she's a little bit housebound. And to be able to access services or get services for her and my father, from their home, that was a big thing. So I thought, okay, that's one view. So I asked my son the same question. He's a 20-year-old, and he really is like, well, I don't know. And but really, what it was for him is the ability to see things, and a lot through his phone. Although not as much as I had thought that he really is driven by his phone, although he walks around with it every day. So it's kind of a different view of things, and really, it's kind of changed over time, and I think it's a changing thing where we're pursuing a moving target all the time. And so when we originally started, my first exposure to e-government was really to engage the citizens in political decisions, in political information. Excuse me. And that was the desire to really, it was more engagement of the citizens, and not so much the delivery of services. We were going to deliver information, but really to incite some talk, about things. And so we see a little bit of that, and I see that from my mom, says, that she actually feels a little bit more engaged. And but really, it very quickly drifted to the demand for citizen services, and that's really where the focus seemed to be. And one of the things I want to mention right now is, and I'll sort of lead through this, is at this time, it was very interesting that a council in Canada was started many years ago, so 10 to 15 years ago, a council on citizen service delivery. And so they were trying to collaborate, provincially, move us all along together, and to coordinate activities across Canada. And one of the things, their early steps they did was to create a survey for Canadians to see what they wanted. And really, that really drove us down to excuse me, what the citizens wanted, which was they wanted services through their computer. They wanted services anytime, anywhere, that kind of thing. And so we adjusted to that. But that coordination, that survey, which now has run, they've run it every 2 or 3 years, and I think we've done it 6 times over the last, say, 15 years, has really become a guide to help adjust our strategies accordingly as we see this moving target of what people want. And so finally, the other driver for us that we really wanted out of e-government was we needed to be efficient. With 1.2 million people, we don't have a massive tax base, and we have some good businesses and stuff in Manitoba, and we have a pretty solid economy, but still we're not generating huge income. Like when you think of per person how much building infrastructure costs, it's quite expensive in a sense per person. So we needed to be more efficient in our delivery of services, and we felt that one way was to deliver online services. It was going to help us with that. So from that, we created some strategies. I don't think there's anything really what struck me, and what I did understand from yesterday was that I think these are very common for everyone. Our early strategies of pushing information, creating the large websites, that kind of thing, creating the concepts of citizen-centered services. So that was really a drive away from the complexity of government. And then, which again led to things like what I really felt the impact of, the single window, the portals into our information. I know, for example, I was in the Department of Agriculture. We're a fairly rich agricultural province. We had something in the range of a couple 100,000 pages of information for farmers and rural towns about everything. And the complaint was it got so large, it was very hard to navigate and find what you wanted. So people like Guy Gordon drove us to say, hey, we got to simplify. We need to start to develop portals for this information. We were just one department out of 17 departments within the Manitoba government. So you can imagine the expanse of information that people had to navigate through. And so this really kind of moved us along into that era. And again, here we also saw the other coordinating body, which again was to me, a very foundational component of our e-government strategy, was the Public Sector Chief Information Officers Council. So these are our CIOs from across every province, includes CIOs from the federal government, which is, again, a much larger organization, and actually includes some of our municipal CIOs as well. So when you think in Canada, some of our larger cities, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, they have more population than our province does in that single city. And so they are faced with those same issues. Now, they might have a little cheaper per capita ability and a smaller jurisdiction to do things, but they're faced with many of the same challenges, and we need to learn and build from each other. In particular, in Manitoba, it is very important for us to work off of other and take advantage of other people's successes. We really can't build everything on our own. And so one of the other strategies that we used was to embed citizen services into our everyday strategies. So we created, a technology strategy called the Manitoba 2020, and so where are we going to be in 2020? And really, we embedded into that the concepts of citizen services, and we also embedded it into things like initiatives such as our red tape reduction. So really, that was just a simplification of our processes for the citizen. And so it has become a force for us within how we do things in Manitoba and how we think about all of our businesses. So I think of hearing the woman from the EU speak yesterday, and the concept of that it's not a technology problem. I think that's very true. Really, a lot of our success has come from the fact that our what I call our program owners or our business units within the government are thinking this way. They're challenging me to deliver those services. And so it's not me coming up with some crazy idea. It's really them actually demanding, trying to get me to move faster to deliver those services. So where have we been? What's our roadmap look like? I wish at the end of this arrow there was a Stanley Cup, but oops, sorry. But really, we have come through a period of, we started with the information websites. One of the first things that we started working on was the e-commerce sites to engage, our citizens in actually taking funds in or applying for things and to deliver funds out. And then we looked at open data. And even open data, I would say it was about 10 years ago I was involved in delivering our GIS information freely across the internet. And really, it was to capitalize on private companies then being able to utilize our data and do things with our data that we couldn't afford to do or didn't have the manpower to do. And really, we rely on them to kind of trigger some economic development for our province through the use of our data. And I think this has been a strong method that we use to do many things now. We've kind of learned from that. That was the early stages of involving the private companies in our strategy. And then, of course, we moved to online services, and we developed some of those. And really, of late, we've been really focusing on system integration, so full integration back through the back end of systems. And so that's kind of my world is system integration. You'll see I'm a little tainted by that. But that's how I think of things, how we've evolved. And really, so out there right now is mobility, and it's a bit of an oddball for us. And I would say, where are we today? We are somewhere just behind mobility. We really haven't dealt with it too much. We have some mobile type applications, but I go back to looking at the way my son operates, and he really is not using mobile apps to that same degree, especially from our point of view, from the provincial government. They can, because he's 20, he can see better than I can. They use it to go right into the websites. So I know, for example, he was, getting his trucking license, and so he went and got the instructions and the manual to study and that kind of thing, all off the internet. And he really looks for it all on his phone, and then goes to a computer maybe to download it or something like that. So mobile is a bit of an oddball for us. I'm not sure if it will solve itself. If it will solve itself for us, in the sense that, these larger phones, I like them because you can see more, you can actually run websites rather than creating, device-dependent mobile apps. Very challenging for us to support that in the long run. I look at it from a maintainability point of view, and can I maintain that app across many devices? I need to write one app for one device, but am I writing a different app for the device than I am for, say, our internet service? That doesn't appeal to me. That's creating a load. And so I think where we're at, and what I have on the very end is the concept of big data. And again, I think this is more of a building upon our open data concepts. And the technology and tools are available to do more analysis and that kind of thing on our data. And I think there's some opportunities there for us. Really, I think of them almost as economic opportunities as much as trying to simplify and solve problems for us. So this is very challenging, and I thought of this hockey thing last night. So my presentation says the challenges are like a giant hill, and you're always climbing the hill, and you get to the top, and you find out, oh, the goal moved, and we're along there. I also think of it like winning the Stanley Cup. You've got to be patient and build slowly to do that kind of thing. But we do find we do have our challenges in Manitoba. I don't think they're vastly different from what you yourselves face. Costs are a trigger for us. How do we do this efficiently? We also have to provide highways and infrastructure, and in particular health services and social services and education, justice for us. We maintain a portion of the justice system. And so really those are our big delivery departments. They're the ones that are really the focus of it, and to try and streamline those and make savings in those through the use of technology is something that we can build upon. But just pure technology from a technology point of view is not very cost effective for us. Privacy has been an elusive thing for us. I'll mention that. And really I think we've been successful to navigate privacy versus actually solving the problem. We don't have a clear identity for every individual in Manitoba. And so when I think of things like health and social services, our progress in there will be limited until we start to solve some of our privacy concerns to actually deliver personal information across that. We do a fair number of applications that require some personal identification, but they're not critical and they're not as sensitive as things that they are in the health and social services arena. Expectations, again, very challenging for us because it's a moving target, and the expectations are changing. The changing demographic of people, how they use technology, what they grew up with has changed over time, so that's always moving on us. Distance, I look at distance and accessibility as being somewhat linked, and the Manitoba being that we have sort of vast distances to cover, it's very hard to do. We also have a very high concentration. Our capital is more than half our population, and so there is a discrepancy between the services that we can provide within the city or within southern Manitoba, off our main, that's where our main internet lines are, compared to what we can deliver in the north. And so we have to build upon other needs in the north, and we have to look at things like the delivery of health services in the north and making more health services accessible. We can sometimes build on that and deliver other services based on the need to drive a line into a community for health services. So I think of like in our north, we often have nursing stations, small health stations where local people can get some services, and they need to connect usually to the doctors via like a video conference or something. The delivery of that line into that community, we then build upon that, and we try to expose that not only for ourselves to use for our services, but also for the local community to try to build on and create some development, economic development, try and maybe drive a little bit of an information economy in these small towns, because the internet eliminates that distance in a sense. But it's not as it's not as simple as it sounds. And so nursing stations are only in some of the communities, not all. And so that has been always a trick for us. The last three, technology, increasing risks, and delivery versus foundational. So I think of delivering a service, or am I building a foundational component? These three I kind of link to my world of technology in the sense of as we have delivered more and more apps, and we have many, a little over 100 or 150 apps out on the applications out on the internet, they have created a technological complexity for me from a sustainability point of view. So I'm very conscious of activities on the internet, the vulnerabilities and that kind of thing that I have to watch out for to sustain those apps. And because we've been at this for a number of years, some of those early adopters of the internet are on older technology, and we've got to maintain the vitality of those applications. Otherwise, they become exposed to the hacks and viruses and the like on the internet. I know I shut down a couple apps, I don't like doing that, and certainly the business didn't like me doing it. Just about 2 weeks ago on that bash shell shock vulnerability that was found. And so we had to scramble our teams to fix those up, plug those holes, and get those apps back online. Thankfully, they are back online. And again, always trying to do that balance between I can build infrastructure or componentry to help us deliver services, but really I need to deliver services in order to create some excitement and some trust that I can do delivery in order to build more foundational components. So it's kind of a chicken and an egg. I don't believe that you can kind of hide back and just build componentry thinking that you're going to be successful. You need to, I think, have a little bit of a balance between those two things. So, the challenges do create opportunities for us. One of the biggest ones for us, and it was interesting in again, the one presentation I understood because she spoke in English, was a woman from the EU, talked about partnership and the importance of partnerships and collaboration, not necessarily at a technology side, but at a business level as well. But this has been an opportunity, for us that we've really been able to capitalize on. And I think some of our biggest successes is when we are working either across the levels of government or even delivering across the provincial governments themselves and sharing systems and that kind of thing. Again, a seemingly simple concept, but again, when you think of semantically, like as she was talking about the differences between our provinces, even though we're in one country, there is some, in fact, even some cultural differences between our provinces. You have to get yourselves aligned in certain areas. So I think of when we were developing, we're very recently moving forward to replace our aging social services systems. And so we look to our provincial counterparts, say, okay, what are you guys doing, for this? Like we all have the same challenges. For us in particular, in our child welfare system is aging out quickly. And so we look to those other provinces to find out what they're doing. We want to actually use, often, even if we can't use their system, we will use the same technology because I know that likely I can get support closer by. And so that's an important piece of it for us, is that even at that level, I do feel that we have some success, even when we're just copying their systems and stuff. And we do have agreements across provinces, so they've been in place for many years. I can basically get any system from another province as long as it's licensed and they have ownership of it for basically $1. And that's how we do business across the provinces, is we can give each other software. But again, from a business perspective, there's often many adjustments that need to be made because we do have some differences. And the ability to smooth those differences can really greatly enhance our ability to collaborate. The second thing I have here is economic development. So this has been a bit of an eye-opener for myself. My whole career, I am an IT guy, and so I don't really think about economic development. But about 7 or 8 years ago, we centralized our IT services in government to create more synergies, to create more common tools and that kind of thing, and to enhance that within our departments of our government. And in doing so, we were put into, rather than, I think traditionally your IT organization fits in with finance or something like that, we were put into the economic development department. So our central IT organization, my organization, Business Transformation and Technology, lives within our current department is Jobs and the Economy. So we were really a part of the economic development department. And so really what they're looking for us to do, which is very new for me, is to drive economic development through our IT investments. And so for a province like ourselves, that's a very important piece. If we can make that linkage, we can make systems that are seemingly unfeasible to do, they become feasible to do because we can drive some economic benefits from them and actually look at them in that light. That's been a success for us in a lot of ways. Some of our early drivers in that, what was our infrastructure, where we would build out into a community, but we would then we would stop at sort of the doors of the community and allow a private service provider who then would take that connection and distribute it to and make it available to the residents in that area. We would be kind of the anchor, what we call the anchor tenant, that to connect our offices. We would pay them. So they had some solid business, a little help their business plan come along, but then they can expose, based on that good business plan or that one tenant, they can then expose it to many other people or many other organizations in the community. So that was a very interesting thing for me to see, and it kind of made me think about it. You know, besides my new boss was now going to be an economic development person and helped me drive that kind of thing. I think that has been a component of our eGovernment strategy that has proved to be successful for us. Also, we've seen the opportunities for technology standardization. That was even, our example of that really is the focus to move us from the departmental silos, even within our own government, to blend us together into a central IT organization and to help drive that kind of standardization. We had done quite a bit from a network point of view and a desktop point of view, excuse me, to drive that standardization. But now we were looking really into my world, which was the application view of things. And really it meant, at the same time, was to drive businesses to stop thinking of themselves as being unique and our departments of being unique, but they have common services that they need. So for example, permitting and licensing is a very common service. We might have 100 different permits and licenses that we issue for various reasons across our government, and there's no reason why they all have to be done by their own systems and that kind of stuff. We could use blended systems to deliver those services. And really, especially permit and licensing, excuse me, because it has a connection to the citizen or to business, really to simplify that process, that really feeds into things like our red tape reduction concepts for business, citizens being able to navigate our areas. That kind of standardization can really drive us to those successes. So I'm just checking, I don't want to get too far ahead or too far behind on me. I'm good. Okay, some of our successes. BizPal. BizPal means, that's probably meaningless to you. Business, permits, and licensing. So that's really that example. And what's interesting about that concept was that it was developed from that Service Delivery Council as a cross-jurisdictional service. So it includes all the business permits and licenses required at a federal, provincial, and municipal level, so that a business can go into one portal or website and find all the information they need. And we've been slowly sort of working through it, so rather than having forms that are print and fill out, we have forms that are they can be filled out online and they can do direct service delivery. And so those concepts were built, and it's a very good example of how we can cross those boundaries and work together to deliver really what is a very successful project from a business point of view. And really, it was more coordination. There's not a lot of technology behind that. That's a fairly simple thing, and that's an important piece for us. It was really the organizing, being able to collaborate with our different levels of government. The Manitoba network, so our network is another good example of really the public-private partnerships that exist. And it's an example that I like to use. And in Manitoba, we would like to basically beg, borrow, and steal anything we can from a technology point of view. And so we develop our network with every opportunity that we can. Every time we see some other organization, agency, even private companies needing access, we try to build upon that opportunity and deliver that service out to a community or an organization, and then allow others to then build upon it. Access Manitoba, that's our single window. That's really our first step into citizens delivery. So that's where we actually have our first single sign-on for citizens, where they can access many services off the same user ID password, their same identity. It is not full-blown identity management. It is really just some basic information, but it allows them to get into services and have something that's a little bit more personalized for them. We've had all kinds of e-forms. We went through the years of PDF'd everything and put it online. But slowly we've been working the other way now and pulling those forms and integrating them into their back-end systems And from that, I now have to, for me, it's troublesome. I have to support some 100+ applications out on the internet, which really are just a component of their back-end applications that we support. And that's where I see that complexity in our world increasing, and I have to be a little bit more aware of those things. Not all of our our back-end systems are protected by firewalls and the like. They can age themselves a little bit more gently. But on the internet, there is no such thing as gently aging yourself out. You've got to be sharp and be on them all the time. And then really the other two successes I believe we've had is our strategies for online services. I think the concept, and I really like to drive that across Canada service delivery coordinating committee. They are really sort of setting the bars for us and allowing us to move forward and really sort of forcing that collaboration. And I think that it seems natural, but it's not necessarily a natural thing. We felt it within our own government that it wasn't natural for the departments to share things, even though we, sometimes are in the same building, for example. You have to force that a little bit. And it's that committee that, for quite a number of years has really pushed us in that direction. And the final thing I mentioned here is the prioritization framework. So what we've done is embedded, so when we do capital IT investment, one of the factors in deciding to make that investment is that you're going to provide services to citizens. And so that's been a big part for us. So I know I'm getting short on time and I've been a little long here. So I do find sometimes it's like, okay, we're good. We've got 100 apps out there. We did this, that. But there is always more challenges ahead, more things that need to be delivered. I'm going to quickly go through here. The elusive, as I mentioned, identity management has been a trick. We've navigated, but we have not solved that. It's something that we need to do. And I think as we move into, we've got good systems in health. We've got good data in health. But we're not exposing that to the citizens directly. And until we can solve identity, we're not going to be able to get to that level. I think that's going to be our driver to move us in that direction. Internet vulnerabilities, I've mentioned that. Technology complexity, have to be careful. And our expectations are moving much quicker. So, how do I wrap this up? Like real estate, when you're buying a house, it's all location, location, location. I think e-government, a lot of it is infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. You can develop these things, but if people can't access them, if they don't have the accessibility, there's not really a point to it. And it has the potential to create an equality between areas, and for us, between remote areas and the urban centers. It has that potential to create that equality, and it can be a very positive thing. Like I said, we have all kinds of different strategies that we've used for that. Another big one for us is leadership and governance. I think that you need your executive or your leadership, and you need these bodies to drive you to collaborate. You need to be someone to focus you all the time. Otherwise, I will think only about serving applications in my environment. I need to be kind of pushed a little bit to think a little bigger, make those contacts, make those calls, and try to get a little further along. Transformation, as a member of the Business Transformation and Technology Organization in the Manitoba government, I have to say the words, you need to transform that business before you go online. And we've seen this over the years, but more so now is to adapt your business processes to that online delivery. And you have to get people over that change and move it along so it blends in. Otherwise, your service is kind of disjointed and it doesn't flow as well. And you need to express that. Citizens will know when you are just putting out a form and there's somebody in the back room entering it. It's kind of like they kind of get that. And so you seem to do that. It seems very logical, but without a focus, it's often lost. I think of it like documentation. I was a programmer, and so the last thing I did was the documentation. But really, it's critical to maintainability of applications. And so it's kind of the same thing. It's the last thing you might think about. You kind of drop it off is the transforming that business organization and doing the change management that you have to. Economic development, we talked a little bit about that. I think it's key for a province like us with a low population. We need to look for those drivers. And why aren't we? We make significant investments in IT. They're capital investments. We should be taking advantage. We should be driving some economic development out of that. And that's not at the expense. We have to watch the competition like competing with other provinces. So I know a very significant thing for us recently, it's not necessarily eGovernment, but I also run our ERP. We run SAP as our ERP system, and I get services. Lately, we developed a new component, and the services I get is out of an SAP support center that the province of Nova Scotia developed. So we'd like to have one in Manitoba. It's a good economic driver, but really the next best place would be a sister province that has it. And because we work closely with them, we were really aware of how they were structuring that deal. We felt that it was important for us to work with that as well. And in fact, it's in Canada, so that's a positive thing for us. So you can do those things and drive that kind of development, that kind of private enterprise through your own government investment in technology. I think that in terms of the big data, I don't know that we will be able to do it. It'll be driven by really us, I think, creating open data, moving that data out there, and allowing private companies then to expose that and do some things, and maybe even make some, do some analysis and find out ways that we can save money. That's really the driver. When I think we have some good health data that's available. We might have a little gem in Manitoba in terms of we have some really quite 30 or 40 years of health data that's quite nice, and people have been using it for research. It's anonymized, it's very clean, but we could do a lot more with that, thinking of the big data tools that are coming down the pipe. As an IT guy, I must say the words process, or I should say process. The delivery of any system, whether it's an e-government initiative or a large-scale application development type project, process is everything. You need the tools to do that work, and you can't forget about them and go too quickly in some ways. You need to make sure that you have those mature tools that you can use and create the effective delivery. So 4 points, executive level support, collaboration and partnerships is key, economic development, and think transformation before solutions. And I think timing-wise, what's down on the horizon for us? Mobility, possibly. Big data, I'm kind of excited about. And I think the big driving one for us will be our healthcare systems. Education systems seem to be coming along, but healthcare, we've made some great foundational components, but in terms of e-government, I don't think we're there yet, and I think that's going to be a new challenge for us. And device independence. The thought of having to write to devices is very hard. I think that we need to keep ourselves independent of the devices. And that's it.
Thank you. Good job. Do we have any questions? We have not many minutes, but a few minutes for questions. Or otherwise, you stay today for a while? Is it
yes,
possible?
I'll be here for a while, and my information is on there. If you have any questions or are interested in anything specific, I can. If I don't know, I can find out for you, and we can connect, and I can get any information you would like.
Are you on Twitter?
No, I'm not.
No?
I'm not a huge technology guy, but really for us, for me, direct contact through email. Maybe I'm a little old-fashioned. I like the direct contact, and I actually like to be here and see you and talk to you. And for me, email, I can have a direct experience with that. So.
You gave us so many great advices and so many good examples. If you were to pick one, the most important, what would you say to this audience?
Well, I think where we have had the most success is really within the collaboration, and I think that that council, the Citizen Service Delivery Council, and they are a part of, they're a subset of the CIO Council. That level of coordination across Canada has really driven us to succeed and to do things that are more economically feasible for us. And so I think that's been a key success for us, and I would really encourage that.
Thank you.
Thank
Let
you.
me give you a flower.
Okay.
That's what we do in Sweden. Thank you so much, Darren.